The year was 5025 and humans had lived in peace for 3,000 years. Across countless star systems, human colonies thrived. Cities floated among the stars like jewels, connected by invisible threads of communication and trade. Ships sailed through space lanes without fear, and humans had become masters of technology, exploration, and diplomacy. Yet despite all their achievements, one thing remained a mystery to outsiders: the human spirit. On a bright morning in the central command station of the Terran Federation, Commander Lyra Haynes walked briskly through the hallways. Screens floated in the air displaying news from every corner of human space. Most messages were ordinary. New colonies established, trade deals made, festivals celebrated. But one alert blinked in red, drawing immediate attention. Lyra stopped and glanced at the notification. It was a transmission from the Vorin, a race of aliens humans had known for millennia. The Vorin were tall, sleek, and precise, with minds sharper than most humans could imagine. Their language was filled with clicks and hums, but advanced translators had long made communication simple. The message was short but chilling. Terrans, your time of peace ends. We declare war. Prepare for destruction. Lyra's brow furrowed. She turned to her assistant, a young officer named Jaren, whose eyes were already wide with alarm. Did it say what I think it said? Jaren whispered. Lyra nodded. Yes, they declared war, but notice anything strange? Jaren blinked. They've never done this before. Not in 3,000 years. Exactly. Lyra's voice was calm but firm. We've had a truce for 3,000 years. And now they say this? Interesting. Meanwhile, across human colonies, the reaction was unexpected. The message had been broadcast to every human settlement, and the response was not panic, fear, or chaos. Instead, it was laughter. On Mars, children were playing in the dome parks, listening to the transmission replayed on public screens. A group of teenagers laughed so loudly that even their parents couldn't help but chuckle. They're joking, right? One boy said, wiping tears from his eyes. Aliens declaring war? After 3,000 years? A girl nodded, grinning. Yeah, maybe they missed their coffee or something. Classic Vorin. On Earth, social media exploded with memes. Artists drew the Vorin in funny hats, attacking humans with oversized spoons or tripping over their own legs. Chefs posted recipes titled How to Cook an Alien Invasion. Humor spread faster than fear. At first, some diplomats panicked. Ambassador Riln from a nearby alien ally called the Terran Federation in alarm. How can your people laugh at a war declaration? He demanded. This is serious. You must prepare defenses. Lyra smiled as she watched the reports come in. Because they know something the galaxy doesn't, she said softly. Humans don't panic. They adapt. They fight, and they laugh at danger. In orbit above Saturn, the Vorin flagship hovered silently. Admiral Cathar stared at the human colonies below through the viewports. His tentacles tightened in frustration. They laugh, he hissed to his second-in-command. They do not fear us. This is unexpected. How can a species survive 3,000 years of truce, grow so strong, and not even tremble at our words? The second-in-command Vlar clicked his beak nervously. Perhaps they underestimate us, Admiral. Perhaps they do not realize the cost of war. Cathar shook his head. No, Vlar, it is worse. They understand the cost, and yet they do not care. That is why humans are dangerous. Back on Earth, the Human Federation's command center buzzed with calm activity. Scientists ran simulations, engineers checked ships, and soldiers trained, but all with smiles on their faces. It was not fear that guided them. It was confidence born of centuries of survival, exploration, and ingenuity. Lyra gathered her team in the main hall. We don't need to panic, she said. The Vorin are predictable. They have never underestimated humans before, but they have now. That is our advantage. They think fear controls us. They are wrong. A young officer, Mira, raised her hand. Commander, do you really think we should ignore the message? They said war. Lyra's eyes gleamed. Not ignore, Mira. Observe, prepare. But don't let fear rule your mind. Humans survive not because we fight blindly, but because we understand our strengths and our enemies' weaknesses. The Vorin have weaknesses, Jaren smirked. And humor, he added. They definitely do not expect us to laugh at them. The team chuckled, breaking the tension. And across the galaxy, humans laughed. That evening, on the floating city of New Alexandria, families gathered in their sky gardens. The Vorin War Declaration played again on public screens. A father lifted his young daughter onto his shoulders. "What do you think, little one? Should we be scared?" he asked. The girl shook her head vigorously. "No, aliens are funny." Her laughter echoed across the gardens, joined by neighbors, children, and even passing drones that projected cheerful tunes. For the first time in millennia, a message of fear from a powerful alien race was met with joy. But not all humans were laughing for fun. Some were already planning. Engineers tinkered with ships, creating new devices that could turn ordinary materials into shields or weapons. Scientists studied the Voron patterns, noticing subtle flaws in their strategy. Farmers on remote planets experimented with turning agricultural drones into defensive scouts. Every human in their own way prepared, not out of fear, but because it was instinctive. In the shadows of the Milky Way, the Voron fleets began to move. Their ships were silent, efficient, and deadly. Yet every maneuver was carefully watched by human sensors. Every calculation the Voron made was predicted and often laughed at. Lyra stood on the observation deck of the flagship Endurance, looking at the stars. 3,000 years of peace, she murmured, and now war. They do not understand us. That is their mistake. Behind her, Jaren looked uneasy. Do you really think laughing will be enough? Lyra turned to him, her expression calm, almost amused. Not laughing alone, but laughter shows something important. Fear cannot control humans, and when an enemy underestimates you, that is when you are strongest. On the distant edge of human space, the first Voron scouts entered orbit around a mining colony. They expected chaos. They expected panic. They were met with music, banners, and small drones that zoomed past them in playful patterns. The humans were dancing. Admiral Cathar gritted his mandibles. "This is absurd," he said. "They are not afraid." Flar clicked nervously. "Perhaps we should retreat, Admiral. They seem unprepared for battle in the way we understand it." "No," Cathar replied, his voice low and dangerous. "We will continue. We must teach them respect, and yet there is something dangerous in their laughter, something we cannot measure." As the Voron ships moved closer, humans prepared not with panic but with cleverness, humor, and unity. On a small moon base, technicians converted mining equipment into defense turrets. On Mars, farmers turned agricultural drones into scouts. In orbit around Jupiter, engineers disguised cargo ships as war vessels. Every step was precise, yet human in its ingenuity. Lyra returned to her office and looked at the red alert blinking on the main screen. "So it begins," she said. Jaren glanced at the screen. "And we're laughing?" Lyra smiled. "Yes, laughing at fear. Laughing at the impossible. Laughing at war itself. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us strong." And as the stars glittered above, the first signs of a new conflict began. But humanity remained calm, confident, and yes, even amused. After 3,000 years of truce, humans were ready for war, but on their own terms. For the Voron, it was a shock. For humans, it was simply another day. Laughter echoed through the stars, a sound that would carry across the galaxy in the days to come. Because humans had learned long ago. Strength was not just in weapons. It was in spirit, in creativity, and in the unshakable courage to face the unknown. With a smile. The Voron fleets moved through the darkness of space like shadows, silent and deadly. Hundreds of sleek ships, shaped for efficiency rather than beauty, gathered near the outer edges of human-controlled space. On board the flagship Zerath, Admiral Cathar watched the stars, his many eyes scanning for any sign of human weakness. "They do not fear us," he hissed to his second-in-command. "Flar, every message, every signal, it is as if they mock us." Flar clicked nervously. "Admiral, perhaps we should reconsider. They are unpredictable. We do not understand why they laugh." Cathar's mandibles tightened. "Unpredictable, yes. But that is not an excuse. We strike, we show them power. They will learn fear." Meanwhile, across human colonies, the reaction was unusual. Humans were not preparing in panic. They were preparing with humor. On the mining colony of Typhon III, workers turned industrial drills into mock battle machines. Engineers rigged cargo ships with bright lights and flashing panels, making them look like playful toys rather than deadly vessels. In orbit around the colony, a small fleet of human ships gathered. Commander Lyra Haynes inspected them, smiling as she watched the younger pilots practice unusual maneuvers. "Why are they flying in circles like that?" asked Jaren, raising an eyebrow. Lyra laughed softly. Because the Voron expect straight lines, rigid tactics, humans are flexible. They improvise. They confuse their enemies with creativity. In the skies above New Alexandria, civilians created holographic displays projecting giant, laughing human faces toward approaching sensors. It was a joke, a spectacle, but also a test. Every light, every movement was being recorded, analyzed, and used to predict the Voron's reactions. On Mars, the Federation engineers invented a small drone that could mimic the appearance of a much larger ship. They called it the Trickster. The drone's mission was simple: confuse the Voron fleet, make them hesitate, and give humans a strategic advantage. "We'll make them aim at shadows while we strike where they least expect it," said Mira, one of the lead engineers. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "It's not just defense, it's clever offense." Lyra nodded. "Exactly. Humans have survived by being clever. Technology alone does not win wars. Imagination wins wars." Across the colonies, humans prepared in unique ways. Farmers rigged irrigation machines to spray bright colors into the sky, creating confusing patterns for approaching sensors. Children designed small ships to look like toys, but capable of rapid movement in asteroid fields. Soldiers practiced maneuvers in zero-gravity gyms, laughing as they slid past each other in unusual patterns. And everywhere, humans laughed. It was not mockery, it was courage. It was a signal that fear would not control them. On the Voron side, confusion grew. Admiral Cathar reviewed reports from his scouts. They fly too casually. They move unpredictably. They laugh. Vlar's beak clicked. They are not afraid. Every simulation, every tactic we have fails against them. "Admiral, I suggest caution." Cathar's eyes narrowed. "Caution is for those who are weak. Humans are dangerous. They will not yield to threats. That is why they are to be crushed, before they realize their own strength." Yet even as he planned destruction, he could not ignore the signs. Humans were preparing, but not as expected. Their movements were clever, their defenses imaginative, and their spirit unbreakable. Back on Earth, Lyra stood on the command deck of the Endurance, overlooking the simulation of the approaching Voron fleet. "They think chaos controls us," she said softly. "But we thrive in chaos. Humans do not follow fear, they create opportunity." Jaren looked at the display. "You really think they will attack soon?" Lyra's smile was calm. "Sooner or later, it does not matter. When they do, we will be ready in a way they never imagined." At that moment, a group of cadets in the training bay performed an unexpected drill. They used old cargo crates and small fighter ships to create a chaotic formation, weaving between asteroids and solar flares in ways that defied conventional tactics. Mira raised an eyebrow. "That is brilliant, and completely unnecessary." "Except it will confuse the Voron," Lyra nodded. "Unnecessary for us, deadly for them." In orbit around Saturn, humans established decoy stations. Some were heavily fortified and filled with harmless supplies, while others looked empty but contained defensive weaponry, capable of surprising even the largest Voron ships. Every move was calculated with a mix of seriousness and humor. Humans treated the war not as a burden, but as a challenge to their ingenuity. On the remote moon of Erebus, children flew small drones in synchronized patterns, creating images of laughing human faces visible even from space. Scientists explained it as a form of psychological warfare. Soldiers laughed as they watched the alien sensors react to the holograms. "This is insane," muttered one young pilot, leaning over the observation panel. "They'll think we're foolish," Lyra smiled. "Exactly. Foolishness is part of the plan. Humans survive by being underestimated." Even in the midst of preparation, daily life continued. Markets bustled, festivals were held, and families laughed together. Humans did not stop living simply because an alien fleet threatened them. In fact, their normalcy became part of the strategy. The Voron expected panic. Humans gave them confidence instead, and then surprised them at every turn. Across the galaxy, alien allies watched in disbelief. Ambassador Rilm sent repeated messages. "Your people laugh at war. How is this possible?" Lyra replied with simple words. "Fear does not control humans. Creativity and courage do." The Voron, however, remained focused on their mission. Their ships moved closer, weapons ready, scanners trained on human defenses. They assumed humans would respond with panic, with fear, with predictable tactics. But every step they took was met with something different, something that frustrated their calculations and slowed their progress. In one instance, a Voran scouting ship entered orbit around a human colony expecting an easy target. Instead, it was met with a fleet of small drones disguised as cargo vessels. Some fired harmless flares, others emitted confusing signals, and some simply hovered in impossible formations. The Voran ship could not understand what it saw. Back on Earth, Lyra watched the reports with a calm smile. "They're confused," she said. "Exactly as we hoped. Do you think it's enough?" Jaren asked, frowning. Lyra's eyes gleamed. "It's never about fear. It's about control, prediction, and creativity. Humans have all three. We do not need to frighten the Voran. We only need to outthink them." Hours passed, and human ingenuity continued to shine. On a remote asteroid field, engineers rigged old mining equipment to create sudden bursts of light, mimicking large explosions to mislead Voran sensors. In orbit around Mars, soldiers flew small ships in chaotic patterns that made targeting nearly impossible. Every move was calculated, yet every move appeared playful. Meanwhile, the Voran Admiral Cathar's frustration grew. "They are unpredictable. They laugh. They do not fear death. How is it possible?" Blar tilted his head. "Perhaps their minds are different, Admiral. Perhaps fear is not their guide," Cathar growled. "Different or not, they will learn. They will pay the price for underestimating us." But he could not ignore the signs. Every step the Voran took was met with clever countermeasures, unexpected tactics, and the unshakable confidence of humans who refused to panic. Lyra gathered her team once more. "Tomorrow," she said, "we will test their reaction. A small human fleet will perform a simulated attack near a Voran outpost. It will be clever, unexpected, and humorous. They will learn that humans cannot be predicted. They will learn slowly that strength is more than weapons, it is spirit." Jaren grinned. "And they'll probably be really confused?" Lyra laughed softly. "Exactly. Confusion is a powerful weapon when combined with courage and intelligence. That is what humans have in abundance." Across the stars, the Voran fleets moved, unaware that the humans they believed so predictable were preparing to turn the tables in ways no one could imagine. Humans were ready, not because they feared war, but because they had learned to thrive in chaos, to turn challenge into opportunity, and to face even the deadliest threats with laughter, cleverness, and courage. And for the first time in millennia, the galaxy began to notice something remarkable. Humans were not just survivors. They were unstoppable when underestimated. The war had not yet begun, but the first victories were already being written in cleverness, humor, and unity, and the Voran, for all their strength, could not predict what would come next. The Voran fleet hovered in the darkness above the asteroid belt of Proxima Secundus. Their ships gleamed like cold steel, arranged in precise formations that reflected centuries of tactical expertise. Admiral Cathar's eyes scanned the human defenses on the planet below. He expected panic, confusion, and disorder. Instead, he saw calm, precision, and laughter. "This is absurd," Cathar hissed. "They are not afraid." Blar tilted his head. "Perhaps it is a trick, Admiral. They may seem calm now, but all civilizations break under pressure eventually." Cathar's mandibles clicked sharply. "We will see soon enough. Prepare the fleet. Engage at once." Below, humans were ready. Commander Lyra Haynes stood on the bridge of the Endurance overlooking the asteroid belt. Around her, young pilots maneuvered small ships with practiced skill. Engineers monitored the asteroid field, noting every potential advantage. Lyra's voice was calm yet firm. "Remember, the Voran expect fear. They expect straight lines, predictability. We will give them neither. Stay flexible, stay clever, and above all, stay human." Jaren grinned. "And laugh while we do it?" Lyra smiled. "Exactly. Laughter is a signal of confidence. Let them see it." The first Voran scout entered orbit, expecting easy prey. It was met immediately with the Trickster, a small human drone fleet disguised to appear much larger than it really was. The Voran scanned the area, confused by signals that suggested hundreds of ships. On the Endurance, Lyra watched the monitors as her team executed the plan. Focus on misdirection. Make them hesitate. Every second counts. The human fleet moved through the asteroid belt with fluid grace. Fighters weaved between the rocks, dodging sensors, and creating patterns the Voran had never encountered. Some ships emitted bright flares, simulating massive explosions that drew Voran fire harmlessly into empty space. The Voran opened fire, but their shots were wasted on illusions. Cathar growled in frustration. "What are they doing?" This makes no sense. Vlar clicked nervously. They are unpredictable. Calculations fail. Should we retreat? Cathar's eyes narrowed. Never crush them now. But human ingenuity was relentless. A squadron led by Lieutenant Mara had modified cargo ships to carry reflective panels that confused the Voran targeting systems. The panels reflected energy beams in unexpected directions, causing several Voran ships to collide with asteroid fields. Nice work, Mara, Lyra said, watching the monitors. They are learning that humans do not fight like any species they know. In orbit above the colony, civilians watched the skirmish through live feeds. Children laughed as small drones darted around the Voran fleet, emitting bright lights and playful sounds. Adults cheered, clapping as humans turned the first engagement into a spectacle of strategy and humor. On the Voran flagship, Admiral Cathar's frustration reached its peak. How can they fight like this? They are enjoying it, Vlar responded, clicking his beak anxiously. They are not afraid, Admiral. Their morale is incomprehensible. Back on the human side, Lyra activated a secondary plan. The asteroid belt had been rigged with motion-triggered decoys, disguised as stationary rocks. When Voran ships approached, the decoys released bright energy flares and holographic images of human fighters. The Voran fleet paused, unsure which targets were real. Jaren laughed. It's like they're shooting at shadows. Lyra nodded. Exactly. Shadows can be deadly when combined with strategy. In a daring maneuver, a small human team navigated through a narrow asteroid canyon, emerging directly behind the Voran fleet. Using the asteroid's natural cover, they launched a surprise attack, striking lightly but effectively at several smaller ships. On the bridge of the Endurance, Mira observed the results. They didn't expect an attack from here. They're completely off balance. Lyra's eyes glimmered. Unpredictability is our greatest weapon. Humans thrive where others fail. For hours, the battle continued. Voran ships trained for centuries in strict formations found themselves chasing illusions and reacting to human tactics they could not comprehend. Each human maneuver was clever, precise, and infused with confidence. Even when the Voran managed to destroy a few small human ships, the humans celebrated the loss as lessons learned. Every defeat teaches us something, Lyra said. Remember that. Never let fear dictate your actions. Amid the chaos, civilians contributed in small but meaningful ways. In one asteroid field, a group of engineers turned mining equipment into mobile turrets. They fired harmless but dazzling energy beams, creating distractions that confused Voran targeting systems. In orbit, holograms projected playful images of humans waving at the alien ships. Cathar, furious, could not comprehend it. They mock us. They laugh at death itself. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Mara led her squadron into a daring trap. Using decoy signals, they lured several Voran ships into a canyon, where they were trapped by gravitational pulses created from nearby asteroids. The Voran ships struggled to escape, taking damage while humans remained safely hidden. On the human command deck, Lyra smiled at the progress. They underestimate us at every turn. That is the key. Never underestimate humans. Hours later, the Voran fleet began to retreat, shocked by the unexpected resistance. Several ships were damaged, and the fleet had suffered a humiliating setback before any humans were seriously harmed. Cathar slammed his clawed hand on the table. Impossible. How can this be? They are too clever, too unpredictable, too human. Vlar nodded slowly. They do not fight like any other species, Admiral. Perhaps we miscalculated. Back on Earth, humans celebrated in small ways. Engineers repaired ships with efficiency. Soldiers laughed and shared stories, and civilians cheered at the audacity of their defenders. Children mimicked the maneuvers they had seen on screens, turning the events into playful games. Lyra addressed her team. This was only the beginning. The Voran assumed fear would guide us, but it did not. Their strategy is flawed, and we have shown them that humans cannot be predicted. Remember this victory, but do not grow complacent. Cleverness, unity, and courage, these are our greatest weapons. Jaren grinned. And humor. Can't forget humor. Lyra laughed softly. Humor is strength. It reminds us that even in the face of danger, we control our spirits. The Voran do not. That is why we will always be stronger. Even as the fleet returned to orbit, humans continued to adapt. Every encounter taught new lessons. Every challenge strengthened their resolve. And every laugh echoed across the galaxy, a sound no enemy could ever truly predict or control. On the Voran flagship, Cathar stared at the reports of the day's engagements. "This is not war," he muttered. "This is something else. They are not afraid. They are not weak. They are dangerous beyond measure." Vlar clicked softly. "They are human, Admiral." "Perhaps that explains it." Cathar's eyes narrowed. "Human, yes. That word carries weight. They fight differently, survive differently, and think differently. This changes everything." Above the stars, human ships floated in calm formations. They were victorious, but they did not celebrate extravagantly. The lesson was clear. The Voran were dangerous, yes, but humans were clever, resilient, and unpredictable. And when humans faced the impossible, they thrived. Lyra looked at the stars, reflecting on the first clash. "We have shown them our strength, not through fear, not through brute force, but through creativity, courage, and confidence. They will learn. Slowly, if they survive long enough." Jaren leaned on the rail beside her. "Do you think they'll try again?" Lyra smiled. "Of course. And we will be ready, smarter, faster, and always human." The stars glittered above, and across human space life continued. Ships moved, children played, engineers tinkered, and soldiers trained, all in preparation for a conflict that would test the limits of courage, intelligence, and ingenuity. The first clash was over, but the war had only just begun, and humanity had already proven something remarkable. Even against a superior force, they were clever, brave, and unstoppable. And the galaxy began to understand something it had long ignored. Humans were not just survivors. They were a force unlike any other, capable of turning the darkest threats into opportunities for triumph. The Voran would return, of course, but by then humans would be ready, not just to fight, but to turn every expectation against them. Because humans had learned long ago that the greatest weapon in the universe was not firepower or numbers. It was spirit. And spirit, like courage, humor, and ingenuity, could never be measured, and could never be broken. The Voran fleet had regrouped, their pride wounded after the first clash. Admiral Cathar paced the bridge of the Zerath, frustration written across every line of his face. Every human move had been unexpected. Every tactic had been clever. Every attack had been met not with panic, but with creativity and humor. "They underestimate us," Vlar said softly. "They think we can be predicted, but their defenses, their strategies, they are beyond comprehension." Cathar's eyes narrowed. "They are human. That explains everything. They are clever, stubborn, and unpredictable. We will strike harder this time. No more mistakes." Meanwhile, humans were preparing not just to defend, but to dominate. Commander Lyra Haynes stood on the bridge of the Endurance, reviewing new intelligence reports. The first clash had given them insight into the Voran's tactics, and humans had responded with ingenuity that even their allies admired. Lyra turned to her team. "They think they know us. They do not. We will use their arrogance against them. We will turn defense into offense. We will strike in ways they cannot imagine." Jaren grinned. "And with a little humor, right?" Lyra smiled. "Exactly. Humor confuses the mind. Courage strengthens it. Humans are full of both." The plan was ambitious. Human engineers had created decoy fleets, each smaller ship equipped with holographic projectors to appear larger. They would move in patterns that mimicked massive fleets, drawing the Voran into traps. Mining equipment had been converted into mobile turrets. Energy shields were rigged across asteroid belts, and even civilian drones were trained to perform distraction maneuvers. Across the colonies, humans practiced in small groups, often laughing as they improvised. A pilot might pretend to make a mistake, only to emerge behind enemy lines, striking precisely at critical points. Farmers, engineers, and children contributed in clever ways, turning ordinary machines into tools of strategy. On the Voran side, confusion continued to grow. Admiral Cathar studied reports with mounting frustration. "They are everywhere, yet nowhere. Every maneuver we predict fails. Every attack is countered with ingenuity we cannot calculate." Vlar tilted his head. "They are humans. Perhaps their unpredictability is their greatest weapon." Cathar's eyes flashed. "Weapon or not, we will adapt. We must." Lyra and her team prepared for the next engagement. This time, it would not be a defensive skirmish. They would take the fight to the Voran, using creativity, surprise, and the unshakable confidence of humans. In the asteroid field near Typhon III, A human fleet moved in tight formation. Small ships darted between the rocks while larger ships followed behind, projecting holographic illusions to exaggerate their size. Each ship had been modified to perform multiple roles, confusing Voran sensors further. Lieutenant Mara led a squadron designed to lure Voran ships into traps. "Remember," she said to her team, "the Voran are precise and proud. They will chase what they think is easy prey. We will give them illusions and strike when they least expect it." Lyra watched the movement on her screens. Timing and cleverness, that is the human advantage. As the Voran scouts approached, they were immediately deceived. Holographic projections showed massive fleets, flares simulated energy bursts, and small ships darted in impossible formations. The Voran opened fire only to strike nothing but holograms and harmless distractions. On the Endurance, Jaren laughed. "It's like shooting at ghosts." Lyra smiled. "Exactly. Ghosts that can strike back at any moment." The humans were not merely defending, they were taking the initiative. In one daring move, Mara's squadron used a hidden canyon in the asteroid belt to emerge behind the Voran fleet. With precision, they struck at weaker ships, disabling engines and forcing retreats. Meanwhile, engineers activated mobile mining turrets disguised as rocks. They fired energy pulses that temporarily disabled Voran shields, giving human fighters an opening for swift strikes. Even civilian drones joined in, creating chaotic signals that confused alien sensors. The Voran flagship was in chaos. Admiral Cathar roared in frustration. "They are everywhere. Our attacks are failing. How can they fight like this?" Vlar tilted his head again. "Their unity, their ingenuity, it is unlike anything we have ever faced. They adapt instantly." Lyra observed the engagement carefully. "Adaptation and creativity," she said softly. "That is what humans do best. They cannot predict us because we do not follow rules of fear or tradition. We follow intelligence and spirit." Across the colonies, civilians watched with fascination. Children mimicked the maneuvers of human fighters in small drones. Families cheered, laughing at the audacity of their defenders. Even in the midst of war, human life continued, not with fear but with resilience and joy. In one daring operation, a group of engineers turned old cargo ships into decoy carriers. They broadcasted signals that mimicked massive energy weapons, drawing Voran fire away from real human vessels. The result was chaos among the alien ranks as they struggled to distinguish real threats from illusions. Lyra turned to Jaren. "This is why humans win. Not through fear, not through force alone, but through intelligence, creativity, and unity. Every person contributes in their own way." Jaren grinned. "And laughter. Can't forget laughter." Lyra laughed softly. "Yes, laughter reminds us that we control our spirit. It confuses the enemy and strengthens us. The Voran cannot understand it, and that is why it works." As the day wore on, the humans' coordinated strikes forced the Voran fleet into retreat. Ships damaged, morale shaken. The aliens realized they were facing an enemy unlike any they had known. Precision and technology alone could not defeat a species that used creativity, adaptability, and unshakable confidence as weapons. Admiral Cathar slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Impossible. They fight differently than any species I have encountered. They are too clever, too resourceful, too human." Vlar nodded. "They are not predictable, Admiral. That is their strength." Lyra addressed her team after the engagement. "This is a victory, but not the end. The Voran will adapt, but so will we. Every challenge teaches us. Every encounter makes us stronger. Remember, humans are strongest when underestimated. They will never see our full power until it is too late." Across human space, the message spread. News of the engagement was met not with panic but with celebration. Civilians laughed at the audacity of their defenders. Engineers and pilots shared stories of clever maneuvers and unexpected strikes. Every human, in their own way, contributed to the defense, showing the galaxy that courage and creativity were more powerful than fear. Even in retreat, the Voran fleet left a lasting impression. They had underestimated humans, and that mistake would shape their strategy for the future. Admiral Cathar realized something crucial. Humans were not just fighters, they were thinkers, innovators, and unpredictable masters of their environment. Lyra gazed at the stars, reflecting on the day's events. "They think war is about weapons and numbers," she said softly. "It is about spirit, intelligence, and courage. We have shown them that humans cannot be controlled. cannot be predicted and will always fight with creativity and unity. Jaren looked at her, admiration in his eyes. Do you think they'll ever understand us? Lyra smiled. Perhaps, but by the time they do, we will have already turned every expectation against them. Humans do not wait for understanding. We act, we adapt, we survive, and sometimes we even laugh while doing it. In the darkness of space, human ships regrouped, repairing damage, sharing knowledge, and preparing for the next engagement. The Voran would return, but humans were ready, not just to fight, but to turn every challenge into an opportunity. And across the galaxy, one lesson became clear. Underestimating humans was the gravest mistake any species could make, because humans thrived where others failed. Humans adapted where others panicked, and humans always turned the impossible into triumph. The war had only just begun, but already humanity had proven something remarkable. Courage, creativity, unity, and humor were weapons no enemy could predict or defeat. And the Voran would learn that lesson slowly, or pay a price for underestimating the human spirit. The galaxy held its breath as the final engagement began. After weeks of skirmishes, the Voran fleet had grown frustrated, battered, and wary. Every encounter had reminded them of one inconvenient truth. Humans were not like any species they had known. They were unpredictable, clever, and unafraid. Admiral Cathar paced the bridge of the Zirath, his mandibles clicking in frustration. We strike with full force. We will overwhelm them this time. No illusions, no tricks, no games. Vlar tilted his head. Admiral, even full force cannot predict them. They adapt faster than any calculations allow. Every tactic we have used has failed. Cathar's eyes narrowed. Then we destroy them. That is all that remains. Meanwhile, humans were preparing for the final phase of the engagement. Commander Lyra Haynes stood on the Endurance Bridge, watching the Voran fleet through the holographic displays. Every report confirmed what they already knew. The aliens underestimated humans at every turn. Today, Lyra said calmly, we turn defense into total control. They think they understand strategy. They do not. They think we fear them. We do not. And they will learn that humans are not only strong, they are unstoppable when united. Jaren grinned. And maybe a little funny too, right? Lyra chuckled. Exactly. Laughter reminds us who we are and confuses those who do not understand. Remember that always. The plan was bold. Human forces had created a complex network of decoys, ambush points, and hidden fleets across the asteroid belts and orbital systems. Some ships emitted holographic images of massive war fleets. Others released harmless energy bursts to simulate powerful weapons. Every move was designed to mislead, confuse, and lure the Voran into predictable mistakes. Mistakes that humans would exploit with precision. On Mars, civilians had even joined in. Engineers rigged everyday machines to perform small diversions. Children flew drones in playful patterns that drew alien sensors away from real fleets. Farmers turned irrigation systems into mobile pulse emitters, generating signals that mimicked human attacks. Every citizen, in some way, contributed to the victory that was about to unfold. As the Voran fleet approached, they were already reacting to a storm of deception. Admiral Cathar growled. They are everywhere. How can a single species be in so many places at once? Vlar clicked nervously. Perhaps it is not their presence, Admiral. Perhaps it is their ingenuity. They think ahead, they adapt, and they control the battlefield without being seen. Lyra's fleet moved with unmatched coordination. Small ships darted between asteroids, creating openings for larger vessels. Mara's squadron led a daring maneuver through narrow canyons, emerging directly behind the Voran fleet. The attack was light but precise, targeting weak points identified from previous encounters. The Voran responded with overwhelming force, but every strike was met with clever human countermeasures. Energy beams were redirected with reflective shields. Mines were triggered remotely to create false explosions. Every attack the Voran launched seemed to bounce harmlessly, leaving them confused and increasingly frustrated. Lyra smiled at the screens. They cannot predict us because we do not follow fear. We follow intelligence, creativity, and courage. Remember that. Always. The Voran flagship attempted a direct assault, sending their heaviest weapons toward the human command fleet. Yet humans had anticipated this. Cargo ships disguised as war vessels absorbed the first strikes, while hidden decoys drew fire away from real ships. Engineers activated gravitational pulse devices hidden in asteroid fields, slowing the Voran ships and exposing weak points. Jaren laughed as he watched the results. They're falling into every trap. Lyra nodded. And they will continue to do so. This is the power of being underestimated. The engagement reached its peak near the asteroid belt of Proxima Secundus. The Voran flagship, frustrated and damaged, found itself surrounded by clever human traps. Small ships darted in impossible patterns. Decoys projected massive illusions, and hidden turrets struck at the enemy when least expected. Every maneuver, every strike showcased human creativity and unity. Even amidst the battle, humans maintained humor. Holographic displays projected playful images toward the Voran, confusing their sensors and creating moments of chaos. It was not mockery, it was strategy. Laughter became a weapon, an unpredictable force that weakened the Voran morale. Admiral Cathar roared in frustration. Impossible! They fight without fear, without hesitation, and they even mock us while doing it. Vlar tilted his head. They are humans, Admiral. Perhaps this is their strength. Perhaps it cannot be defeated with force alone. The final strike came from Mara's squadron. Using narrow asteroid canyons, they emerged behind the Voran flagship, striking precisely at weak points. Simultaneously, hidden decoys projected massive holographic fleets, making it impossible for the Voran to respond effectively. Within minutes, the flagship was crippled, and several smaller ships were forced to retreat. On the Endurance, Lyra watched the results calmly. This is it. The Voran will retreat, not because we destroyed them entirely, but because they cannot predict us, cannot control us, and cannot break our spirit. Humans do not yield to fear. We adapt, we create, and we laugh in the face of danger. Across human colonies, people celebrated quietly yet joyfully. Engineers repaired ships. Children mimicked maneuvers with drones, and civilians cheered at the ingenuity of their defenders. Humans had turned the impossible into triumph, showing the galaxy that courage, intelligence, and creativity were as powerful as any weapon. Admiral Cathar, on the other hand, was forced to retreat. The Voran fleet limped away, defeated not by superior numbers but by a force they could not understand. Human ingenuity and spirit. Vlar tilted his head. They are remarkable, Admiral. Perhaps we underestimated the true strength of humanity. Cathar growled, defeated. Yes, remarkable. And dangerous. Humans are not like any species we have faced. We will have to respect them. Eventually, back on Earth, Lyra addressed her team. Today we proved something the galaxy has long ignored. Humans are clever, united, and fearless. Strength is not only in numbers or weapons, it is in creativity, intelligence, and spirit. Remember this victory, but remember even more. Our greatest strength lies in who we are together. Jaren grinned. And laughter, Commander. Don't forget laughter. Lyra smiled warmly. Laughter reminds us that even in the darkest times we control our spirit. The Voran could not understand that, and that is why we won. Across the stars, the news of the Voran retreat spread. Humans were admired, respected, and even feared, not for brutality but for ingenuity and courage. Other species began to understand that strength was not only in firepower, but in spirit, unity, and creativity. In the aftermath, humans repaired damaged ships, improved strategies, and shared lessons from the engagement. Every citizen, from the youngest child to the oldest engineer, had contributed to the victory. The message was clear. Humans were stronger when united, clever, and courageous. Lyra stood on the observation deck looking at the stars. 3,000 years of truce and now a war we did not fear. We have turned their expectations against them. The Voran will never underestimate humans again. Jaren looked up at her. Do you think they'll come back? Lyra's eyes gleamed. Of course. But when they do, we will be ready. Smarter, faster, and always human. The stars shimmered as life across human space returned to normal. Children played in the parks, engineers tinkered with machines, and soldiers trained, not out of fear but out of preparation. Humanity had proven its power in the most human way possible, through cleverness, courage, unity, and laughter. The Voran had learned a lesson that no weapon could teach. They had underestimated humans, and that mistake would shape their strategy for generations. But humans had learned too. They had learned that courage, intelligence, and spirit were their greatest weapons, that when faced with impossible odds, ingenuity and unity could turn the tide, and that even in the darkest battles, Laughter and confidence could be as powerful as any fleet. Lyra looked to the stars one last time, feeling pride in the people she served. We have shown the galaxy that humans are not just survivors. We are clever, courageous, and unstoppable when united. The impossible is only impossible until humans face it. And when we do, we triumph. Across the stars, one truth became clear: never underestimate humanity. And for the first time, the galaxy truly understood the meaning of the phrase, humans laugh in the face of war, and they win.